When we think about Jesus, it's easy to picture him as a spiritual teacher, right? Or just a major historical figure. But what if we looked at him through a totally different lens as a case study in just unbelievably effective leadership? Well, that's exactly what we're going to do. Let's get into it.
I mean, really stop and think about that for a second. In just 3 years, that's it. He built a movement that has lasted for thousands of years and changed the world. Now, that's not just some spiritual miracle. That is an absolute masterclass in building an organization, in developing leaders, and, crucially, creating a succession plan that actually works. So the big question is, how on earth did he pull it off? The clue starts right here, in the book of Acts, and the key phrase is to do and teach. See, it wasn't just about what he said, it was about his actions, the systems he put in place, and how he lived out his leadership. So for this explainer, we're going to zero in on the do part, the practical, nuts and bolts leadership strategy that Jesus used. And what you find when you look closely is that Jesus was incredibly intentional. He wasn't just gathering followers, he was actively creating the next generation of leaders. It was a core part of his whole strategy. But this is also where a massive problem tends to pop up in a lot of organizations today. Okay, so here's the fundamental disconnect we see all the time. On one side, you've got leaders who expect new talent to just show up with all this grit and character, but they don't really provide the coaching to develop it. And on the other side, you have these new emerging leaders who are starving for a personal approach. They want a real coach, someone to challenge them and give them honest feedback. And that gap, well, it creates a ton of friction. And this friction usually comes from two completely opposite ideas about what leadership even is. See, most of us, if we're honest, we naturally lean toward one of two extremes, and that imbalance, that's what leads to some really serious problems. Okay, take a look at this, because it really lays out the two mindsets perfectly. First, you have the being in charge leader. They like the position, the authority, but the big danger for them is way too much control. They feel like they have to have all the answers. Then you've got the giving charge leader. They love the teamwork, the synergy, but their danger is the opposite, not enough control. They expect everyone else to figure it out. Now, be honest. Do you see yourself leaning one way more than the other? Most of us do. A really helpful way to picture this is to think of them as leadership ditches. You've got a ditch on either side of the road. And what often happens is someone who's worked for a super controlling micromanager decides they'll never be like that, so they swerve their car clear across the road and drive right into the opposite ditch of being way too hands-off. The goal isn't to pick a ditch, it's to stay on the road. And let's be clear, this isn't just some abstract management theory. The stakes here are so high. When leadership is out of balance, it causes real, tangible pain. We're talking about constant frustration, deep divisions, unhealthy conflict. And in the context of the source material, it can even lead to things like church splits. This stuff matters. Okay, so if those are the ditches, how in the world do we stay on the road? Well, this is where we circle right back to our main example. Let's break down the balanced leadership model that Jesus lived out every single day. This is the secret sauce right here. Jesus didn't pick a side. He had this incredible, almost supernatural ability to see what was needed in any moment. One minute, he's clearly being in charge, telling a storm to be quiet or calling out religious hypocrisy. But then in the very next moment, he's giving charge. He's sending his disciples out, giving them authority, empowering them to lead. He wasn't stuck in a ditch. He operated from this perfect place of balance. And maybe the most powerful example of this is in the Gospel of John, where Jesus, the leader, the master, gets down on his knees and washes the feet of his followers. Think about that. He served the very people he was leading. This wasn't him giving up his authority, it was him showing a completely new kind of leadership, one that's built on a foundation of service. And that, right there, is the magic of this balanced approach. When people see a leader who can both lead with strength and serve with humility, it changes everything. You don't have to demand their commitment. People want to follow. They want to contribute their best work because they feel seen, valued, and empowered. So let's take this one step further and see how it gets super practical. A balanced leader doesn't try to eliminate conflict. No, they understand how to transform it, how to turn that friction from a destructive force into a catalyst for real growth. They create something we call healthy conflict. So how do you actually do that? Well, it really breaks down into 3 key steps. First, you have to create a culture of honesty.
And that's more than just saying you have an open door policy. It's building an environment where people feel safe to give honest feedback without fear of punishment. Second, the leader has to encourage and, more importantly, model vulnerability. When a leader says, "I don't have all the answers," it signals that they care about the team as people. And third, they become a master fact finder, not a fault finder. The goal is always to get to the root of the issue, not to figure out who to blame.
And the whole point of all this is to totally reframe what conflict even means to your team. See, unhealthy conflict is always a competition. It's win-lose. My idea has to beat your idea. But healthy conflict, the kind that a balanced leader cultivates, is all about collaboration. It's about finding the win-win, where the focus isn't on who is right, but on what is right for the mission. It's about getting everyone in the boat rowing in the same direction to find the absolute best solution together.
So, as we wrap this up, I want you to make it personal for a second. Think about those two ditches, the ditch of too much control and the ditch of not enough. Which one do you tend to swerve away from? Which one are you more afraid of falling into? And more importantly, what is one small thing you can do this week to start steering yourself away from that ditch and back onto that balanced path? The kind of leadership we've been talking about today.